those meetings where nothing is happening and everything is happening. Gone are the days of the one central issue. The firefighting days have passed us, but there are so many things going on that it's difficult to choose what might emerge as a major issue from these meetings by the time they're over in a few days. But I'm going to focus on a few things that emerged from the press conferences this morning with Christine Lagarde of the IMF and Jim Kim of the World Bank. Now, one, of course, is global growth. That's the one that's never going away. The subject that's entering into this discussion now is stagnation. It's kind of like the global economy has a body ache. There's nothing specific that's wrong. Nobody can identify one thing that needs to be fixed, but there's pain everywhere, and you sense a certain bewilderment among the policymakers about what to do next. If you want the pessimistic side, all you need to do is Google Larry Summers and see what he's saying. He's saying this morning in the press that these are really the worst days since the financial crisis. That's a strong statement, and it shouldn't probably be interpreted as thinking that things are anywhere near that bad, but they're dangerous, according to Larry Summers. On the other side is going to be just the interpretation we see from the IMF, from the G20, from the various policymakers here about whether they agree with Larry Summers' views. Certainly that air of darkness has seeped into the world economic outlook, but there was certain pushback from Lagarde this morning about whether the view is really dark or just that there's a certain amount of concern about where things are going. The second issue that's going to enter into the discussion, I think, is the refugee crisis in Europe. That's an obvious one that came up during Jim Kim's press conference, and he revealed that there are discussions that he's having with leaders in Europe, the leaders of Germany and the UK, about creative steps that they can take to help alleviate the situation there. Specifically, he talked about ideas that are emerging around the World Bank, working with some of the bigger governments in Europe to provide funding loans for entrepreneurs, for refugees that are looking for ways to sort of better themselves in the countries they are finding themselves. Dr. Kim also talked about the issues that other countries are facing, such as Jordan, who've been forced to take on a lot of these refugees and really don't have the financing in place to help them, nor is the World Bank technically able to give them as much help as they need because of lending limits that are in place. Jim Kim is talking about trying to find ways to loosen those limits, it seems. Now, the final area to pay attention to is just the global commitment in these two institutions. Each are facing separate questions. Jim Kim is looking for increased funding. He wants a capital increase. He says the bank has enough capital to get by for the next few years. But if something happened that worsened the global outlook or backdrop that we have right now, his lending would be strained. He could not keep up with an increased demand than what he's dealing with right now. And then the second issue comes down to leadership at the IMF. Lagarde was asked this morning whether she would be interested in a second term. She said it's not up to her, but essentially she's open to the possibility. Now, this raises all kinds of questions. There are a lot of disappointment, I guess I could say, in the membership about her handling, the IMF's handling of the Greek crisis. There's the perennial push for a leader from an emerging market country to take over the World Bank, and the IMF in the case of Ms. Lagarde. So all these questions are going to factor into the debate about Lagarde's future, and it looks like we'll be discussing that maybe more than we anticipated this weekend.